We have explosive new allegations of wire fraud against Donald Trump surrounding this entire Freedom 250 4th of July scam that he's been running. And it appears that Donald Trump has been misleading donors into making payments which were rerouted to a different organization, which just so happens to be a little thing we call a crime. Now, what is being alleged is that people intended to donate to the America 250 celebration. Already a bad idea, I think, like just kind of silly, but fine. And instead, they were given wire instructions to send the money, which would send the money to Freedom 250. Now, you might be saying, wait, David, America 250, Freedom 250, what do you mean? I will explain. This report comes from Democrats on the House Natural Resources Committee. You might say natural resources. Why? Because it involves the National Parks Service. Now, to understand why this is a huge deal and a potential crime, you have to first understand the difference between America 250 and Freedom 250. America 250 is a commission that is nonpartisan and congressionally chartered. Freedom 250, on the other hand, is an executive branch project, meaning President Trump. And it is an executive branch public-private partnership directly under the White House. So different organization, totally different goals. For example, that UFC cage fight that put a bunch of money in the pockets of Dana White, the president of UFC, Donald Trump's friend, that is an example of an event organized by Freedom 250, not America 250. Trump's failed state fair, which we'll talk about later, was under the Freedom 250 umbrella. And it appears that this was not an accident. They've been using the logos interchangeably. The organizers of Trump's Freedom 250 have been aggressively targeting the people who donated to America 250, creating confusion as to who am I donating to. And the reason that they would do this is that Donald Trump originally wanted to commandeer America 250, which has actually been around for years. It didn't go so well when they tried to do that. So instead, they created Freedom 250, and the confusion began. Now, this could be multiple crimes. There could be wire fraud here. Could also be charitable solicitation fraud. These are federal crimes. But the leaders of Freedom 250 could also be subject to charitable solicitation violations under the laws of Washington, D.C. So a lot of potential crimes here. Trump did his normal games with Freedom 250. He nested Freedom 250 under the National Parks Foundation. So it all sounded very cool and very legal. But like he often does, Trump overthrew the board of the National Parks Foundation, appointed people to the board who rubber stamp anything Trump wants, like the true loyalists in the worst sense of the word. And the other issue, of course, is who actually committed the crimes, because Trump has, as he often does, put some layers between himself and the people who are getting conned. And in reality, it would probably be the consultants who would go down, since they're the ones putting together the outreach and the marketing, and they'd be the ones allegedly fleecing the donors. Now, this is exactly why we have charitable solicitation laws. People have a right to know, who am I really donating to before they send the money? This is like really basic stuff, and violate the whole premise of how they're organizing it violates the point of the laws. Now, notice how often this Trump administration creates organizations with names that sound similar to existing ones. And even if a donor, is paying some attention, America 250, Freedom 250, American Freedom 250, it's sort of easy to confuse. And the movement that has been lecturing us about rigged and scams and corruption, they now appear to have been misleading their own donors. Now, listen, it's almost laughable. Do I expect anyone to go to prison for this? No, I don't. I haven't been sleeping under a rock for the last 10 years. Is it another example of how I'm in it for the average Joe? I'm here for the average worker. And meanwhile, they are grifting donations from their own followers. Prices haven't come down. I won't give you the full list, but what has happened is Trump pocketed 1.4 billion from crypto. That's who really has done very well. The average person, really not so much. And so it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. But maybe the most embarrassing part of all of this is, America 250, Freedom 250, they're confusing people, they're fundraising, they're doing all this stuff. After all of it, after all the money they raised, after all the time they spent saying this is going to be the best and the biggest and whatever, almost nobody showed up. It seems as though the entire state fair that was organized with this money brought in 200,000 people over 16 days. That's like 12,000 people a day. Trump's fireworks display, the most cool and big and polluting, by the way, it brought in a crowd of 150,000 people. And later, I'm going to contextualize why that is such a flimsy and shriveled number. So maybe the most humiliating thing is that after all of it, all of these events failed miserably. And part of it has to do with the algorithmic wall that exists on a lot of these different platforms between people and how we don't see what they see. They don't see what we see. I write about this a lot in my forthcoming book, Pay Attention. By the way, some of you will notice that my forthcoming book has replaced my first book on the shelf behind me. I am going to be giving away this particular copy. This copy on my shelf is copy 1 out of however many will ultimately be printed. This particular book will sit with me here until the book is released, and then I will dedicate this book to someone in the audience, and we will send it to you along with copy number 1 of The Echo Machine. I will tell you a little bit later how we're going to make all of that happen. Thanks for watching. Check out this other video. And if you like our content, make sure to subscribe so YouTube puts our videos in your feed, and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple.